My name is Jyoti Bachani. I'm a professor at St. Mary's College of California. I serve on the board of the US and India chapters of International Humanistic Management Association. I see some familiar names and faces, so welcome, Ken. Good to see you again. Today's talk will be about creating a culture of humanism in organizations, and I will introduce the speaker briefly, waiting for a few more people to join in. And as we wait, since it's a culture talk, I'm going to take the liberty and read us a poem. One of my favorite poets from India has just been awarded the 59th Gyanpith Award. And 4 years earlier, he was given the Pen Nabokov Award at the international level for his voice as being a universal voice. And he lives in Raipur. Sunita's joining us from Raipur. And she enabled me to go visit him in Raipur last year when I was on a sabbatical in India. And I've translated his poems for about 10 years now. And this is one of my all-time favorites. I'll read my English translation first, and then just for the sound of it, give you the Hindi version as well, because I know there are at least three people in the room who can understand Hindi and maybe more. Poet's name is Vinod Kumar Shukla. Defeated, a man sat down. Defeated, a man sat down. A man I did not know. Defeat, I knew. So I went to this man and offered my hand. He took my hand to stand. He did not know me. He knew and offered hand. We both walked together. We did not know each other. We did know walking together. हताशा से एक व्यक्ति बैठ गया था. हताशा से एक व्यक्ति बैठ गया था. व्यक्ति को मैं नहीं जानता था. हताशा को जानता था. इसलिए मैं उस व्यक्ति के पास गया. मैंने हाथ बढ़ाया. मेरा हाथ पकड़कर वह खड़ा हुआ. मुझे वह नहीं जानता था. मेरे हाथ बढ़ाने को जानता था. हम दोनों साथ चले. दोनों एक दूसरे को नहीं जानते थे. साथ चलने को जानते थे. Thank you for letting me share something that brings me joy. And with that, I'm going to introduce our speaker. Steve Gunt, welcome. Thank you for agreeing to do this Humanism in Practice webinar series with us. Steve is the CEO of a multi-generational family business that was started in 1910. Now it's called the Gunt Company. They manufacture electrical insulation components for electrical power systems, equipment such as power generators, transformers, switching gear, electrical fuses, and many others. They have 12 facilities in 5 countries, and the company has grown by more than 50 times in the last 30 years. So they're clearly doing some things right. Mm-hmm. Steve graduated from the University of Notre Dame and Chaminade College Prep. He studied at La Universidad Iberoamericana in Mexico City. He also worked there at Industrias Unidas SADCB, a multi-billion-dollar family business. He lives in University City, Missouri, with his wife and his 4 kids, although he's traveling this morning and joining us from Europe. So with that, the floor is all yours, Steve.
Jyoti, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with this group today. I very much am humbled by the opportunity and very much look forward to this opportunity to talk about our journey of humanistic leadership and culture evolution at our company. So, Jyoti, thank you very much for this opportunity. And as I tell this story today, if anybody has an interest in following up My contact information is at the end, and I'd be happy to help any school or professor that's interested in learning more about our experience with humanistic leadership. I work quite a bit with Washington University in St. Louis and also St. Louis University in St. Louis. So happy to pursue helping those in academia share this message and this journey, because I think it's really important. And part of my challenge to you all today is to ask, in essence, how we can build uh, business school curriculums with the idea of teaching humanistic leadership. And so that's part of what we're going to touch on today. Um, our world, and I consider it the challenge of our universities, our world needs universities to specifically teach humanistic leadership to our students. And I will share what I mean by humanistic leadership. So, from my perspective, humanistic leadership focuses on serving others. And really, if we're going to build a business based on humanistic leadership, we have to start with a culture that listens empathetically to both our customers and our team members. I think that's really important. And one of the books I'll talk about later by Bob Chapman, who is a big proponent of humanistic leadership education in our schools, it really emphasizes the importance of listening, and listening in particular empathetically. But it's also really important, if we're going to have a business built on humanistic leadership, that there is a vision, a strategy, a set of aligned business plans that lead to value creation for the customers, so that you have a sustainable business model for the long term. Because to serve others, we really need a sustainable business model. And of course, in order to have a strong business model that is there in business to take care of your team members, you need to keep attracting talent to the organization. And talent will join your organization if you are focused on developing their knowledge, their skills, and their leadership behaviors so they can become who they are meant to be. And if you can build a culture around these concepts, you can have a sustainable business for the long term. And so, again, what I'm after is that challenge to our universities to consider how we can develop business school courses to teach humanistic leadership. So what we're going to talk about is kind of this evolution of our culture that we had, and this journey of humanistic leadership that we've been on. And so I will mention many of the very specific things that we have done that have been important to our journey of cultural improvement based on humanistic leadership. One of the things I will say, in my experience, and I'm happy to have somebody correct me, but in my experience, I think universities do a great job of teaching the what of business, the models, the frameworks, the theory of business, whether it's marketing, whether it's accounting, whether it's finance. But what I would like to see is more teaching around the why, the philosophical why behind humanistic leadership, that message of service to others, as opposed to what you hear a lot about with business, where folks are very self-centered and driving their own personal wealth. What we'd like to emphasize, what I'd like to see emphasized, is a more philosophical why, in terms of really what I consider to be the meaning of life and serving others. And in addition to that, addressing the philosophical why, can we be more intentional and specific in teaching the how of humanistic leadership? So even if philosophically you're aligned with serving others and having a mentality that emphasizes humanistic leadership, how do we teach the how? And how do we get specific? And so that's part of our message today. Is I'm going to talk about very specifically what we have done to develop a culture of humanistic leadership. And of course, these are just our ideas. These are just things that have worked for us. And we've benchmarked other companies extensively, which I'll talk about. But I think it's really important that we develop the teaching tools that study and demonstrate what works in terms of humanistic leadership in organizations. So that's the challenge for today. But I want to start with just a really quick introduction to our company, who we are, what we do. We're basically, as Joy mentioned, now a really a sixth generation family business. We have about 800 employees and 12 factories in 6 countries. We make what are called electrical insulation materials or components for electrical power systems. Frankly, what we do isn't that important. One of the great lines I love from Bob Chapman, who wrote the book Everybody Matters, who I'll talk about quite a bit. One of his great lines is, our product is our people. And we feel very much aligned with that we're really in the business of making people. And in business, we see as a conduit that provides opportunity for folks to become who they're meant to be. So I think it's easy for an educator to think in terms of my role in life is to help folks learn who they are and learn what they can be through knowledge. I look at business as providing the opportunity for people to grow into who they were meant to be. If we can unlock their potential, if we can develop their knowledge, their skills, their behaviors, we can help them become who they were meant to be. So that's kind of the way we think about business. But one of the things about universities, and again, I'm happy to hear feedback on this, but we tend to think about big businesses. We study big businesses like IBM or Apple, and we get infatuated with NVIDIA and these wonderful businesses. But the reality of those are the exceptions. Those are the top 0.1% of businesses. But the vast majority of business have a history like us. We're a mom and pop organization. I was employee number 14. My brother was employee number 12. We were a small company, much like an Italian restaurant. We had, 9 family members out of those 14 employees. So we started very small, and we had to professionalize our business in order to grow. And we had to put in systems and processes that were repeatable. And when it came to developing a culture, we went down that same road of having to professionalize the business. And so we did that by benchmarking other companies and going out and studying best practices from other organizations. And I think that is really powerful. And I do think one of the things universities do well is they do study other companies through case studies and so forth. And I'd like to see that continue in terms of, can we find companies that have humanistic leadership cultures, and can we study what works so that others can learn from those lessons? So I'm going to start first by talking about something that's really important. Of course, to have a business with a culture built on humanistic leadership, you have to have a sustainable business. So you have to be able to have a business model that adds value for your customers. And so we'll talk about some of the systems and processes that we have in place that help us operate what we call an operationally excellent organization. So what we do is we have a people-first culture, and we combine it with a business model built on operational excellence. And those two things are very tightly woven together. And that really produces the kind of performance that we have. What you see is here on this slide is our true north compass. At the top, you see our number one guiding principle, which is take care of each other. And you'll see our other 2 guiding principles are take care of the business and take care of the customer. So we look at that as a 3-legged stool. And every decision we make is based on balancing, taking care of each other, taking care of the customer, and taking care of the business. Any decision that isn't balanced among those three is probably not a good decision for the business. And so we're going to talk about how we go about building a people first culture and how do we go about having a business model built on operational excellence. So one of the things I think that's important here is that some people may think, well, if you have a humanistic, take care of people first culture, then maybe that's not in alignment with driving shareholder performance or taking care of the stockholders, let's say. And I want to disavow everyone of that notion. And I want to tell you that we have outstanding data, and some of which you see here, that we track in terms of a balanced scorecard. And we use those three guiding principles of take care of each other, take care of the customer, and take care of the business. We use those to organize our performance metrics. And we measure ourselves against the best companies in the world. And you can kind of see here what the results are. And this journey that we've been on, that's been roughly 10 years, has resulted in such a dramatic improvement of our business that I would be happy to argue with any business leader about the power of having a people first culture. And so we'll talk about that today. What does that mean? How do we do it? And I hope that inspires others to think that this is a good way to run a business. So let's go back to 2015. How did we get on this journey? How did we awaken ourselves to the power of humanistic leadership and operational excellence? And it started with some work I was doing with what was called the Operational Excellence Association at Washington University. And we got together about 150 manufacturing companies in the St. Louis region, and we started benchmarking each other and learning about each other's business models and what made our business unique. And it was a wonderful opportunity to learn from other companies. And so a lot of the things I say about business models, about systems, about processes, it isn't because I've operated in a silo of just our organization. We have spent a lot of time benchmarking and studying other companies. And one of those great companies was a company in St. Louis called Watlow Electric. And they're a world-class manufacturing organization that's had books written about them. Really well-run organization. And they opened their doors to us and they taught us about operational excellence, which was just wonderful. And then we also had an experience where there's a company called Medtronic, and they had won what was called the Shingo Prize. And just by the grace of God, we were fortunate enough to meet a guy named Phil Williford and attract him to come to our organization. And he taught us all about Shingo Prize and operational excellence. And so we were just very, very fortunate to have those experiences. And so part of my point to you is just there's a continuous learning component of all of this. And it wasn't anything that we just created out of our own genius. It was based on the good fortune of having people share with us. And so what we learned about is the Shingo model of operational excellence. And I think this is really, really important in terms of having a sustainable business model based on, as you see in this house, if you can see in the lower left-hand corner, there's a foundation built on culture. And for any of those of you who have studied Japanese business models and perhaps the Toyota way that launched what is often called lean manufacturing, it's really based in the late 80s. It really became a phenomenon across manufacturing where lean manufacturing was the latest buzzword for, I don't know, 30 years. And but one of the things that the book Toyota Way missed was the cultural aspects of really what was the success of Toyota as a company. And it really started with, and most people forget this, respect for people. That was the core of really the Toyota Way. And if you look at the bottom left-hand corner, lead with humility, respect every individual, develop people, assure a safe environment, empower and involve everyone. That's humanistic leadership. And most people would not associate Toyota necessarily with humanistic leadership because it's often been missed. Culture's been overlooked and forgotten in favor of various other tools that had neat buzzwords. So, in terms of developing a sustainable business model, the Shingo model was very impactful for us in terms of driving the theory of operational excellence through our organization. And so it helped us define our guiding principles. It helped us put in the systems and processes and tools that allowed us to repeat successfully these programs that were very successful for our company. And so we have five primary systems, and I'll walk you through each of them quickly. Gemba, visual management, Kaizen, process standardization, and cultural leadership. So we'll touch on each of those real quick because they're really important in terms of the how of our humanistic leadership. So let's start with Gemba. Gemba means the place in Japanese, a Japanese word. It means the place where work gets done. And the idea of Gemba is that leaders go out to wherever work gets done. In a university setting, that would be the classroom in most cases. In a factory, that's out on the shop floor. In an accounting firm, maybe that's out in the offices. And so the idea is that leaders demonstrate humility. They go out to where the folks are doing the work and they make personal connections. And they say things like, how can I help you? What about your job is challenging? What obstacles are you facing that I can help you overcome? And it's all about empathetic listening. It's a servant-based, how can I help you? And it's that consistent effort to connect, to ask people how you can help them that drives personal connection. And so what you see here is a Gemba walk or a Gemba talk checklist. And we have these where we are very intentional about asking our people to go connect, follow this checklist. Here's a process that can help us connect and listen and understand the needs of others. So very, very powerful tool called Gemba. Now, what do you do with that listening? This is very important. You take the listening, and we use these visual management boards. These are hung on the walls where work gets done. And what they are is they are demonstrated listening. So if somebody has a problem, we use a red card to write some notes about what we understood the issue was. And then we post them on a wall. And so this visual management system, this card system, allows us to demonstrate listening and make sure that everybody knows what the challenges are and what the opportunities for improvement are. And you'll notice there's data used on those boards as well, because data helps us understand what is happening in the business. And so every day, these teams get together, and for each team, they have their own board. And you'll see in the lower right hand, there's a picture of a person there who is responsible for that board. And so it's a stand-up meeting where they listen to each other, they set priorities, they discuss what's going on, what the issues are, and they work together in person to solve those issues. It's not emails flying across the internet. It's human beings talking to each other, listening, and documenting the opportunities for improvement. So demonstrated listening is what visual management is all about. Now, once you have a series of challenges or problems, we have to help each other solve those problems. Most organizations don't have a problem-solving methodology. Some organizations, they just go to the boss and the boss gives them an answer. Other organizations, they get in a room and they have unproductive meetings that have no agenda. there's all kinds of ways that companies work. But what we do is we have a systematic problem solving process where we use what's called an A3, which is just the size of the piece of paper. But it's basically based on the scientific method, you could say. What we're trying to do is get a group of people together, typically 4 to 6 is ideal. Sometimes we'll go as many as 8. But we get people together to, number one, scope out what the issue is, determine what a goal to resolve this issue or take advantage of this opportunity may be. We then get the facts, what we call the current state, the data that helps us understand what the issue really is. We characterize what the situation is that we're facing. And so once everyone's on the same page, they've agreed to what the issue is, which that in and of itself is a very important step. And we've framed, not with opinion, but with data, what that current state issue is. Then we can start dreaming, brainstorming about, hey, what would an ideal dream-like state be? What would we love to see in terms of a characterization of the future? And so with that brainstorming, then we can come up with a realistic future state given the resource restraints, whether it be time or money, whatever those restraints may be, will then characterize a realistic future state. Once we've gotten that far, we come up with an implementation plan that connects the current state that we're facing today with the future state that we want to develop. And that action item then has a series of very specific action items. And it's a very, very powerful way to get teams to agree to what needs to be done, by whom, by when, and gets everyone in alignment towards solving that issue or that problem together. So very, very, very powerful tool. Most organizations do not have a systematic way to solve problems or address opportunities, and this is a very, very powerful tool. So again, that's a great system. So I want to address there's a note here in the group chat from Ravi with a question. So he says, in the current environment where the pace of technological change is incredibly dynamic and rapid, and AI, VR, and ML are continuously reshaping, how can organizations effectively implement total quality management and continuous improvement initiatives when the observed phenomena often change before these initiatives can be fully analyzed and implemented? That's a really great question. And then what strategies can be employed to ensure operational excellence and product innovation keep pace with rapid technological advancements? I think that's a great question. And I think for us, our ability to have small groups that are empowered based on data and daily discussion allows us to move really, really fast because we're constantly communicating. So we have these team meetings every single day. And that togetherness, that dialogue, that ability to pull together a team really quickly to address an issue using a standard process and a tool that everyone in the whole company is trained on how to use, very, very powerful. So that's what's worked for us. But very, very good question. And feel free to pop a question into the chat, or if you want to speak up, I'll pause every once in a while and you all can ask questions as well. So at this point, any other questions at this point? Awesome. All right. So the next thing we do is we do process standardization. So we do a lot of value stream mapping, which is similar to process flowcharts, but it has a lot more data in it. And so we really make sure that we understand the data that is driving these different processes. What is working for the individual? What is not? How long does it take? How can we help you be more efficient? It's a lot of empathetic listening. I can't tell you how many people in the world suffer through their job when they know there's better ways to do it, but they're never asked or empowered or engaged to make it better. But through process standardization, we're constantly asking our people, this is today's standard. This is how we do it today. But if you have a better idea, if there's another best practice, awesome. Let's pull together a group and change it and make it better. So it's constantly driving for that next best practice. And that really gets back to that humanistic leadership, which is that servant leadership where you're constantly asking, how can I help you? And so part of that, a big component of that servant leadership and that how can I help you is how can I develop you? And so we are an organization that is constantly doing classroom training. You would think that we were a university. We have a series of courses, including one called Listen Like a Leader that we adopted from a company called Barry Waymiller, where we teach basic human communication skills and listening skills. So we have a week-long course, 40 hours of prep, 40 hours of classroom time, 40 hours of homework, where we teach our people how to communicate. So you talk about a gap in university curriculums. We need to teach, I hate to say it, basic human communication skills, how to listen empathetically, how to hold people accountable with compassion. These are very important concepts that we're just in most universities not teaching. So at any rate, we also teach, I mentioned that Kaizen A3, we teach a course on how to solve problems. So all of our leaders go through a 3 week course that's delivered 1 week at a time, separated typically by 6 or 12 months, where again, you got 40 hours of pre-work, 40 hours of classroom time, and then 40 hours of post-work, where they're learning problem solving skills. So we do spend a ton of time on classroom development, and obviously we leverage a lot of textbooks and reading. And so as I talk about cultural leadership, humanistic leadership, one of the things that's really important is we have what it's called a individual development plan for each individual. We meet with our folks 4 times a year. And it's not a performance review, it's an individual development plan. So what you see here on that, it's a little hard to read, but on the left-hand side, there are 8 cultural values, the definitions of those values, and the behaviors that reflect those values. And we ask people to be introspective, almost like a Socratic process where we're asking questions and challenging people to be introspective and say, am I living these values? Are my behaviors aligning with these values? And we only ask folks to reflect in their own way. We don't necessarily give feedback unless it's asked, but we are asking that others are being introspective. And then we ask people, and you can see in the journal here, we ask, what is it that you would like to do in life? What is your ideal state vision for your life? What does your dream look like? And the reason we ask is because we are seeking to help them get there. And we help get them there by first understanding where they want to go. And then we start to think about developmental goals in terms of what knowledge do they need to get there? What skills do they need to develop that leverages that knowledge? And then what behaviors are going to make the use of that knowledge and those skills habitual in their lives? And so this is really all about helping people get to where they want to go in life. And we call that an individual development plan. So that is just a huge part of our culture. Any questions up to that point? Okay, it says if everything is data driven, how do cultural or people issues get addressed? Really through listening. I don't want to. I don't want to leave the impression that everything is just data driven. Um, if you are connecting personally with people, for example, through Gemba walks, if you are serving others through individual development plans, there is this human connection to the leadership that, although, of course, we use data because it's factual and it tells us the reality of what is happening, it is not mutually exclusive with being empathetic and compassionate. And I hope that answers your question. Feel free to chime in if you have anything else you want to mention in that regard.
Terrence also had a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, Terrence,
Is in the chat.
it's in the chat.
I'll read it out. Terence
Great.
asked, a lot of people and organizations know what you're talking about or presenting. Enforcement, as we have been really seeing today, is the issue and problem. It's a comment more than a question. And
Yeah.
Well, is asking for feedback.
Yeah, I'm not. Speak a little bit to the term enforcement. What do you mean by that?
so
To make sure. Go ahead.
I would say let's save the longer discussions till you have finished presenting,
Okay.
Steve.
Okay, great.
Clarification questions are good interruptions, but for people watching the recording later, it's better to have your presentation and then the discussion section.
Okay, sounds great. So as we develop servant leaders, as I mentioned, one of the things that we do is we have very clear career ladders. So the individual development plans tie in well with career ladders, where we say for each functional area, whether it's accounting or sales or engineering or whatnot, we say, what is it that you'd like to do? How can we help you get there? And then they know where they could go because it's shared with them. So it's amazing how many organizations don't have formal career ladders and don't discuss the potential growth options for their team members. But we certainly do, and we think that's really important. And as I said, we do a lot of internal training to help people become who they're meant to be. So that's from an operational excellence perspective. That is how our operations tie into humanistic leadership. But let's take it to the next level. So in our journey of transformation, I got to give a lot of credit to Bob Chapman, as I mentioned, and his company Barry Waymiller. He wrote this wonderful book called Everybody Matters, which was really inspirational for us, and it really helped us understand the how, as I mentioned earlier. How do we lead? How do we take care of others in a very humanistic way? How do we develop a people first culture? And so we really followed their lead. And one of the wonderful things is who you see there in the photo is this gal named Connie Dooley, absolutely wonderful person. And she was a customer service person, one of our best customer service people. And on the weekends, she was leading retreats for her faith congregation. And she and I would have these great discussions about spirituality. And I said, wouldn't it be wonderful if you could help people in their lives as a kind of a life coach, just like you do on the weekends with people's spiritual lives? What if you could be that kind of life coach or counselor for them? And so this is kind of a crazy idea, but we took her out of, and she was a wonderful customer service person. We took her out of customer service and we created this job called a career coach. And with great intentionality and articulation, we launched this effort to really develop our culture in a humanistic way. So one of the very first things we did is small group listening sessions, asking for opportunities on how we can improve our culture. We then developed a culture core, which in each of our factories is like 3 or 4 people that volunteer to lead our culture efforts in taking care of others. They pulled together this culture core group and they came up with our company's purpose, our why as an organization. And this made me fall out of my chair, but it's absolutely wonderful. Our corporate why is to recognize and serve others so that lives are transformed. To recognize and serve others so that lives are transformed. That has nothing to do with making electrical insulation material. And I couldn't possibly be more proud that our people came up with that. That wasn't me. That was a reflection of our culture. And it was what they wanted us to continue to develop throughout our organization. So they also came up with our cultural values, our true north compass, and the vast majority of our training courses. So a lot of this was internally developed, inspired by Barry Waymiller and Bob Chapman, but internally developed based on listening to our people. Very, very powerful. And so we'll talk about a little bit more detail what Connie did. So they came up with, like I said, our purpose as an organization to recognize and serve others. And they came up with our core values, which you see in our True North Compass. And one of the things that we've been doing for now more than 20 years, we use what is called the Q12 engagement survey from Gallup. And we've got now 20 years of data. And so we have used the Q12 for, like I said, 20 years. But we've added these 5 additional questions about our culture. And this gives us the data, and we can see over time, really how has our culture improved. And the really powerful thing is if you ever give a survey, the most important thing you can do is take action after the survey. Listen, of course, but you have to demonstrate that listening turned into action. And so what we do is after every survey in every facility, we rank the top 3 opportunities for improvement. And then each of those 3 have an A3, a Kaizen event to drive improvement in those 3 specific areas. And again, it's empowering and engaging the team to drive that improvement. So very, very powerful tool. But an amazing thing, Connie, we've got 12 facilities in 6 countries. Connie goes to every single facility every year and listens to every single employee and small group team listening sessions. Really, really powerful. She's like the grandmother of the organization. She's unbelievable. So a big part of our culture, aside from listening and taking action in a demonstrated way, is we do a ton of recognition and celebration. So what does that look like? It looks like shining the light in every corner of the organization where people are doing hard work, good work, and making sure they realize that they're appreciated and what they're doing is known to everybody else. We give out awards for the best, customer service person, the best plant, the most improved individual. We find everything under the sun that we can possibly recognize and celebrate and lift people up and show others what good looks like. It really, really powerful. We celebrate every award from a customer. We have great parties that recognize plant performance. In the lower right-hand corner, you see all these Valentine's notes where people are writing appreciation notes. Every time we have a meeting, we have what's called a recognition board where we'll stop at breaks and we will read individual notes that team members have written about each other, just thanking each other and saying, hey, Joe helped me with this project and he was inspirational in getting the project done on time. It's just taking every opportunity to make it a cultural habit to stop and recognize others' efforts and their good work. And it's really powerful. Just as an example, because this is Friday, every Friday we have what's called Celebration Friday. So you will see mass emails sent across the entire company from all corners of the globe where they're recognizing and celebrating an individual, just sending each other notes and copying the whole organization. It's a really powerful way to lift people up and help them and encourage them become who they're meant to be. So I don't want you to think that everything is a big kumbaya moment and it's always group hugs. The reality is we are a high performance organization. We perform at a very high level for our customers. We're a very demanding organization. We're a winning team. And so that requires a lot of hard work, a lot of accountability. And so we teach how to hold people accountable to high levels of performance, but we do it with compassion. And so one of the really important things about having a business that has a high performance culture is that you put in very clear expectations. You put in very clear processes. You train people and you celebrate results. And so this is kind of our path to being both a high performance organization, but a very humanistic organization as well, where we're focused on taking care of folks and helping them achieve at a very high level. I'm sure everyone here is very familiar with the bell curve, right? And so one of the things we think about all the time is in the manufacturing world, in all the plants we operate around the world, we are encountering team members with a wide range of blessings. Okay, all human beings come into this earth with different situations, and we have to, as an organization, understand how we can recognize the blessings of individuals and then help them fill in the gaps in terms of knowledge, skills, and behaviors so that we can come to a very high level of performance. So someone may join us, they've gotten through life at the 35th percentile level of performance. Maybe they come to us and they've gone through life with a 50th percentile level of performance in their life. And of course, we have many people that come to us at the 95th percentile. But how do we take all of those folks and move them along the bell curve to perform at the 99th percentile? And how do we help people become who they were meant to be by providing them with the knowledge education, the skills development, the behavioral reinforcement according to our cultural values so that they perform at a very high level? And so these systems and processes we've put in place are very important for that. And what does that mean? What does it mean to transform lives, to have a culture whose why is to recognize and serve others so that lives are transformed? And so, as a few examples, Debbie Foster joined us as essentially an executive assistant, if you want to say, and she wasn't given a whole lot of opportunities in life, not a lot of education, and she was living in a small town, and just hadn't seen a lot of the world. We helped her go back to school. We helped her get a degree. She went from being an executive assistant, if you want to say, and moved into customer service, then moved into IT. She learned business intelligence software. She volunteered to go to our China operation and run our IT implementation of our new information system. From there, she volunteered to go to our Mexico plant. And then she moved to our plant in St. Louis, Missouri at corporate headquarters and became a part of the executive corporate team on IT. Her life dramatically changed by just giving her an opportunity, giving her a light, and just radically changing her life. Jim Ludwig, when we met Jim, he was a machinist running a manual drill, moving a drill press up and down, making parts all day long. Today, Jim Ludwig is a plant manager with really, it's our highest performing plant. And his life is completely transformed. He also went back and got a college degree with our help. So these are what we mean by lives transformed. They came to us with a certain level of blessings, and we leveraged everything the good Lord gave them to help them become who they were meant to be. And that is really the most fulfilling and meaningful part of business. And I think that is what humanistic leadership is all about. So to just wrap it up, what we did in our journey of humanistic leadership is we built a people first culture and combined it with an operationally excellent business model that's sustainable for the long term. And that has driven outstanding performance for our company. And so I just want to review what I think are just the 4 keys to success in our business. But the challenge that I have for you all is to develop specific humanistic leadership courses to teach the how, not only the what and the why, but the how of humanistic leadership, because frankly, our world needs it. So that's my soapbox for today. Jody, I really appreciate the time to talk to these wonderful folks, and I hope you all have an interest in taking this message that humanistic leadership can be extraordinarily powerful in the lives of folks, and of course is very key in building a sustainable business model for the long term.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your journey, the company's journey. You're preaching to the choir here. Many of the ideas resonate with many of us in the room, and I've shared resources. We have about 6 minutes left to close the hour. I'm happy to stay longer for the discussion to continue, but to honor those who have other commitments at the end of 6 minutes, I'm going to suggest that we read the questions first, and you can address them together rather than one by one. And the rest can stay to have the discussion.
That sounds great. Do you want me to read them, or do you want to read them?
I'll read them out. How important is hiring for culture? Can it be taught, trained to anyone who has other skills you need for a specific position? And I think you addressed this when you talked about the bell curve and finding the question was asked before you got to that slide.
Yeah.
Ravi's question is that in a world dominated with social media, where all the voices are given equal weight, then how can we address the diminishing role and relative importance of normative expert knowledge? And how can we ensure that the expert insights are not discounted, thereby safeguarding the overall improvement and correct progress of the society? Surely your expertise is better than the novices who just want to talk. And yes, that's a very valid concern. My doctor has a poster that said he went to school for 10 years and knows a little bit more than my 10 minutes of Google search on my health condition. So that's a very valid concern. Sunita asks, how do you maintain the culture across different manufacturing facilities? And how do you prevent them from recognition practices how do you prevent the recognition practices from becoming ritualistic? And I had that question as well, because those token celebrations sometimes become, oh no, more work because company now expects me to come and do the kumbaya. So how have you overcome that? Comment to say, becoming who we were meant to be is wonderful. Michael asks, have you correlated your culture in the hiring process with personality testing for potential employees, like Myers-Briggs personality tests or others? So those are the questions. Those are very good questions. I personally really appreciated the individual stories you shared at the end. And I wonder each Jim or Debbie, how many got the degree and then left and worked for your competitor? And how do you maintain the loyalty if you're investing in them? Because the culture outside the organization might be one of opportunism as well. So that's the real tension I've seen in some of the other organizations where I've seen such wonderful work done as you have been doing. So I'll leave the last few minutes for you to address as much of these as you can.
Yeah, well, to your question, we've really never lost anybody to a competitor. Our culture is so unique, and so few companies have this type of culture that our turnover, what we call our regrettable turnover, those who leave who we didn't want to leave, is extraordinarily low, especially at the professional level. So, in a manufacturing environment, and on the shop floor, you get some entry level turnover when you got a 3 or 4% unemployment, but we do not have a challenge with people leaving us, because if you make it very personal and you have good friends, almost family at work, you just don't want to leave that environment. It's very, very powerful. And imagine if what we call it a parental level of care. If you are feeling a parental level of care, do you leave that organization? Probably not. And that's powerful. When there was a question about recognition and becoming ritualistic, if it were going through the motions, if it were compliance based, then it wouldn't work. But when it's heartfelt and personal, and it's based on connection and true appreciation for one another, and when it's totally organic, that's when it works. So there's a question about the other facilities worldwide. We have 2 factories in China. We have one in India, one in Mexico, operation in Vienna, Austria. Human beings thirst, in my opinion, for recognition and celebration of who they are individually. They thirst for feedback on how they could develop and improve themselves. They thirst for a vision of what could be in their career. So again, I kind of go back to that parental level of care. Many of us who are parents who have children, how do we think about our children? We think about what knowledge we need to put into them. What values do we want to see them exhibiting in their behavior? We think about what skills do we need to develop in them? And then we start charting a path for them, don't we? As parents, we're like, where should they go to school? Where should they go to college? What career should they be in? This is the way we think about our own children. Imagine developing leaders across your organization who apply that parental level of care for their team members. That's the holy grail, so to speak. If we can develop leaders like that, that's humanistic leadership. And that's a parental level of care that I think is really powerful. Your other question was about assessments. Yes, we do assessments, particularly at the executive level. We use a DISC assessment for everybody. There's no right or wrong answers on DISCs, of course. It's just what are people's personality and behavioral tendencies. And that just helps us with communication. So we do assessments to understand the blessings that we're working with. And then we use that to influence our communications and our interactions with folks to help, again, recognize what their blessings are, whether that's their intelligence, whether it's their skills, their talents, their personality type. All of this is what I put under the category of someone's blessings. And then we try to work with those blessings to help them, like I say, become who they're meant to be.
Wonderful. We do love success stories, and to have values aligned and attain and demonstrate business success definitely makes it an easy case to bring to the students in the classroom. Ken's joined us from Japan and he has put multiple comments. Ken, would you like to speak to those?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. Sometimes people ask, what's the difference between TQM and TQC? Most of Japanese believe TQC is a good level to understand what's quality management. But unfortunately, from my point of view, TQC is the totally organizational top-down management system focused on all quality from top-down management system. Hopefully, I we choose the TQM, total quality management. Whole quality is a important things we should focus on. We maintain. And also, Deming is a key person for Japanese quality management history. But Deming, when they back to the US, they changed the keywords plan, do, study, and action. But almost all 100% of Japanese say no, the plan, do, check, action. That's a key point of today's session. We Japanese need more humanistic cultural development. Cultural leadership is needed to improve our Japanese management. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Ken. Very insightful. I agree.
I agree as well. And I loved the part about developing people and offering opportunity, because in the current atmosphere, to speak to, if AI is going to take all our jobs, I'm told in 5 years, teachers will not be necessary because AI will be doing a better job. I would love each of my students to have an individualized instructor. I'm all for adopting technology and letting me focus on what brings um, my own who I want to be to fulfillment. So that mindset, I think, will be even more necessary, because if you're offering opportunity, that's what human beings want.
Yes.
AI
Yes.
can do everything else, but opportunity will come from others looking out for each other. I also think your intuition's very strong, because as you kept saying, parental level of care, parental level of care. And I know that I was not taught this even in the best schools that I attended, but it came from my family, where the understanding of asserting power is in day-to-day acts of lifting somebody else up. If you're lifting somebody else up, you're asserting that you're powerful. And that's an act of service too. But the power theories in the business schools didn't necessarily focus on that. So I really appreciate your focus on people and focus on a level of care that might even be controversial. You can't openly put it in a book to say, you're a manager and do parent level of care. And, I had a question around allowing people to contribute ideas and have it visible and having a formal process to make decisions on that. And Silicon Valley, where I'm based, is very creative, but there is a risk, because organizing is about collective activity. And if you allow everybody to be creative, you can create chaos. So how do you surf the edge between allowing individual creativity and yet having a consistent, organized deliverables and activity where some creativity will have to be contained in the interest of greater good?
Yeah, that's a great question. And really what that comes down to, which is a whole separate conversation, which a presentation I do also, um, strategic planning and strategic deployment drives alignment through the entire organization. So when you have crystal clear clarity about what the organization is all about and what our strategies are and what our priorities are, then everybody can be completely aligned in a common direction. And this is true for any organization. And so if it starts with the why, and everybody understands our why, and then we get into the how, which is our cultural values. And then lastly, we get into our what, which is, oh, by the way, we make insulation products. There is alignment through the entire organization. And thus, everybody is working towards the same set of goals. And again, we make everything visual so everybody knows what all the goals are. And so that keeps everybody focused and pulling in the same direction. And really, when you have groups of, typically 4 to 6 working together on plans based on a vision and a strategy that's really clear, it's amazing how effective those teams work together to, I don't want to say minimize the distraction, but it just really helps keep everybody well aligned. And it's very powerful. Oh, you're on mute, Jody.
I'm going to officially close the session by offering you a formal vote of thanks to say thank you for walking with us this morning, sharing your story, bringing us rich, detailed information that can be illustrating the values and ideas that our students need to see illustrated with real world examples and not just ivory tower ideas that we can carry in our head. And I'm going to put a couple of links in the chat window for those of you who are not already part of the organization and want to be part of it or know about other events. Humanistic Leadership Academy, the International Humanistic Management Association, and know that it's 100% volunteer-run organizations. The websites are often outdated because we can't all keep up the volunteer effort it takes to keep things going. And our volunteer in chief is Ariane. She has kindly helped us with setting this up. So thank you, Ariane, for all the support to enable all of us to gather this morning. I know
Thank you
Michael
all.
Pearson was here for most of the session. He left a vote of thanks for you in the chat, Steve. Michael Pearson's the founder of the International Humanistic Management Association and the chief troublemaker who's gathered this tribe of over 5,000. The recording will be available. Ariane, we can stop recording now. And